thing about Hull is the quirky sense of humour.
Yeah.
It's unique. I'm mafting.
I'm going on road.
I'm nithered.
Yeah, I'm just going to Chippy for patty and chips.
Oh, yeah. Patty butties.
And mushy peas, of course.
Hull has got its own phone system.
The Humber Bridge.
William Wilberforce.
Bee lady.
Oh, yes, little bee lady. She's lovely.
You don't know who the bee lady is?
She's only tiny and she...
goes round dressed as a bee. She's 92.
We're East Yorkshire.
Not East Yorkshire, City and County of Hull, definitely.
Definitely Yorkshire.
East Riding of Yorkshire.
We're not North Humberside or anything like that.
Yeah, Yorkshire.
East Riding. What do you mean?
Mark Steele's in town.
Thank you very, very much, exuberant, lovely people of Hull. Welcome to Mark Steele's in Town, which comes from Hull, a city that boasts old docks and an old fishing port and once great rugby league teams and shouts... and seems to shout from every corner, we used to be important. Because what makes Hull is where it is. Hull is an independent state in every way. A recent headline in the Hull Daily Mail said, Hull has been declared the second worst place to live in England. But do we care? No. Of course not. Probably slightly disappointed that someone's topped you. And you're not even sure where you're part of. So you meet old blokes who tell you they gave us an Humberside postcode, the buggers. But we're not Humberside. I never opened a letter in my life if it's got Humberside written on it. I had my gas and electric cut off and I went to jail for ignoring court orders, but I don't care. And before that we were Yorkshire, but we're not Yorkshire. I painted over signs saying we're not Yorkshire, we're East Riding, and got sent to jail for that. And before that they said we were East Riding, but we're not East Riding. My dad set fire to East Riding Town Hall saying we're West Holland. And he went to jail. And before that, my granddad wrote a rebel song that went, some men fought and some men died for all to be part of Humberside. So I'm Humberside through and through. No, hang on, I've got that wrong. Everything about you seems to be independent from the rest of Britain. Everyone else has red phone boxes, so yours have to be white. Because Hull wasn't part of the national phone system set up in 1919, and now no one in the country has any phone boxes except you, so you can go, our phone boxes are a different colour from the ones the rest of you would have if you had any, and the fact you don't have any don't matter. And everything you have, you like it to be different to what everyone else has got. So you say you've got the world's first Paragon interchange, but that's because everyone else just calls it a train station. And every tourist brochure says you've got the world's first submarium. So a review on TripAdvisor said, the world's only submarium, I'm pretty sure that's just because nobody else has bothered calling their aquarium a submarium. I love that you're brazen about this. There's a website, 21 things to do in Hull, and I looked at that. This was one of the things. Visit the world's only submarium. Other places have sharks and various variety of fish, but they call themselves aquariums, whereas the deep calls itself a submarium. So that's why it's different, because it calls itself a submarium. You could do that with anything. Look at this. Come down the road, see them Bulba Shinatons. Other places call them lampposts. But we've got the world's first Bulba Shinaton. And that leaves 20 more other things on the website to do in Hull. The next one says, this is one of the things to do in Hull, remember, right? I promise it's exactly what it says. Walk along the road. But this, I mean, can you just turn up to walk along this road, or do you need to book in advance? You can at least make the effort to say it's not a road, it's the world's first drivatarium. People must go home after a holiday here and say, well, the trouble is 2 weeks just isn't long enough to fit everything in. But credit to you, Hull, this Outlook somehow won you the status of 2017 City of Culture. In the pitch for becoming City of Culture. Every town has to make a little film. And Hull made a film in which someone stood in the old town explaining the beauty of the city. And I swear this is what they said. Here is where the land falls and where the sun rises. The first steps on a journey, an adventure, a port, a USB. Listen. It's the sound of the possibility of change. You can dream, you can run, you can fly. This is where we came from and where we're going. The judges must have thought we'd better give them something to do. They're all off their heads on skunk. Doesn't mean anything, does it? It must be the only pitch for a City of Culture ever that makes a town sound like a perfume advert. Oh, it's a carrot, it's a wardrobe. It's a fairy with no wings. Oh, fragrance for the woman of tomorrow. You had the Turner Prize here, and I couldn't make any sense of any of it, to be honest. And the volunteers all came up, and they were going, I see you're looking confused. This is a modern conceptual pastiche of Hogarth's original parody of aristocratic debauchery. Makes a change from Cash in the Attic, don't it, love? It's full of culture here. Always has been. Mick Ronson, David Bowie's guitarist in The Spiders from Mars, is from here, which gave its name to a local nightclub, which must be such an honour because someone sent me a message. Go to Spiders nightclub. You're guaranteed a love bite. If you don't mind your feet being puked on. There's a statue of Philip Larkin, the famous poet, in the station. He came here in 1955 to be librarian at the university and immediately fell in love with the place. To start with, he wrote, I'm settling down in Hull, all right. Every day I sink a little further. What a hole. What a witless, crapulous people. Now, a less cultured town would have inspired him to write less memorable words, but you made him think of crapulous. Perfect match for a wordsmith. And he picked up on the accent here as well, which is why he wrote one poem that went, other towns may trap you less and fail to make one squirm, but Hull folk are quite crapulous, so perfect for a perm. One of my favourite works of art here, actually one of my favourite works of art ever, is that little plinth by the harbour called The City Speaks that looks like nothing. You speak into it and the words you say come up in giant letters on a tower half a mile away. And every single person who's been there has thought, oh, let's say a rude word. But it's programmed not to recognise swearing. So all year there have been people, pensioners, children, all sorts of corners of society stood over it going, go on, try piss. Everyone been there? Yeah. What's the rudest thing you can get it to say?
Leeds.
Leeds. I love the way it's had to be adapted to understand a Hull accent, isn't it? That's brilliant. Otherwise, all year there'd have been crowds of people going, why won't it right? Coca-Cola. Must be some sort of advertising rights issue. And it picks up everything, everything. So if no one's there actually deliberately saying it, it just picks up the nearest thing to it, doesn't it? So there must have been times when it's lit up things like, hello, Janet, it's Simon here. I've booked the hotel in Scarborough. My wife can't possibly find out. One of the first works of art created for the City of Culture year was the Sea of Hull installation by Spencer Tunick, who said, it was inspiring to intertwine the city's maritime heritage against an urban backdrop. Which sounds traditional, doesn't it? A sunset over the docks, perhaps. But in the end, it was thousands of you lying naked together on the road, painted blue. And there were 3,200 people who turned up for it, including one man who sent me a message very, very proudly saying, I was there, Mark. My balls were on the front page of The Guardian. Chris is... Where's Chris? Right, Chris, so you were one of the 3,200 in this sort of grand piece of work?
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
And early in the morning must have been freezing, wouldn't it?
So, we were told to get to Queen's Gardens for 2 o'clock in the morning. The artist, he rolled up, run through what the itinerary is going to be, and then when he'd done that, he said, right, undress. And there was kind of a nanosecond where 3,200 people just, like, looked at each other. And then we started getting undressed. Most people seem to be in groups of friends and family and whatever. But I went on my own, and I'm there on my own, painting away, and there's a guy in front of me. He's on his own as well, this old guy, and he's painted himself. And when he looked as though he'd finished, I realised that he'd missed a long... a line straight down the middle of his back, which he probably thought he'd covered or he'd tried to cover. And then I realised, well, I'm probably the same. My back's probably missing some paint as well. So we're both obviously naked at this point. I thought, well, somebody's got to make the first move here. So I kind of shuffled across to him, and I stood next to him and said, "All right, mate." And he went, "Yeah." I said, "Look, it's kind of like this. You've got some white bits on your back, and I've got some white bits on my back. I'll do you if you do me." So I did his back, and he did mine, and we swapped our paint tubs around, and then there was like this awkward few seconds where we just kind of stood next to each other, not speaking, staring out across Queen's Gardens, and I just said, "Yeah, I'll see you later, mate." And I went back to my clothes, and that was it. I never saw him again. But
You've not kept in touch?
Strangely enough, no.
Thanks very much, Chris. Brilliant. Thank you very much. But one of the greatest pieces of culture in the area, obviously, is your Humber Bridge, a feat of the most extraordinary engineering. At one point, the longest suspension bridge that you could walk over in the world, finally connecting the north side of the estuary to Lincolnshire in the way that people had dreamed of for hundreds of years. Under one article about the complex engineering involved, the first comment was, "I've been living for nearly 13 years in Cottingham. I've never crossed the Humber Bridge as there's no reason to go to Lincolnshire." But it is amazing. Even if you don't want to go anywhere, it's just amazing, this bridge. And to drive across, it's only £1.50, and then for that you get to see Barton on Humber. Which is tiny and almost entirely under the bridge, and is described on one website as very much equidistant from Hull, Scunthorpe and Grimsby, the Golden Triangle. I was told by someone who seemed perfectly reliable that when the Channel Tunnel was being built, someone in Hull who never left Hull asked this person, "Why are they building a tunnel? There's already a bridge." Because they thought the Humber Bridge went to France. But the City of Culture year, clearly a huge success, because this is a cultural city, it's an independent culture. So the most famous piece of art in Hull for decades was a piece of graffiti on a corrugated iron shed by the river of an upside-down bird with the words... Dead bod. Hull for dead bird. And that's just written. And it was painted by a trawlerman called Pongo in the 1960s. And it was adored so much that when the sheds were being pulled down, there was a huge campaign to save the dead bod sheet of corrugated iron. And now the whole thing is in the art gallery. And there's an art critic who's written a piece about it that goes, "The piece is reminiscent of David Shrigley, a visual artist known for crude compositions and rather mordant humour." But maybe you always had this sense of independence in Hull. It's always been a radical city, plenty of angry Puritans back in the 1500s, partly because you've always been backwards and forwards to Holland, which of course is only just over the road, and eventually Hull was so militantly Protestant that it played a vital role in British history that you're clearly very proud of. You started the English Civil War. The King came to Hull in 1642 to fetch some weapons, but the town governor, Sir John Hotham, under pressure, shut the Beverley Gate and refused to let him in. So the King went to Nottingham and declared war, and Hull loves this. You know, the war, all them battles and people killed with swords. We started that. And you were probably right cocky at the time as well. "In the name of the King, open the gate." It's not a gate, it's a Majesty Repellium. And then when the town was surrounded in a siege, the people of Hull diverted the river to swamp the king's army. And then when he was executed, I expect you drew a picture of him upside down with the words, "Dead King." And then there was a member of parliament that you had during the Civil War, Andrew Marvell, the poet. And he was the main figure of opposition to the royal family through satirical poetry. For example, in 1664, he wrote this satirical poem. Some folk are regal, believing it legal to act like a wicked barbarian. But others may wish they'll be down with the fish in the planet's first ever submarine. And one of the most brilliant pieces of history you can view here is in the George pub, which boasts it has the smallest window in the world. And it is an impressively small window, I'll grant you that. Very thin, about half a centimetre, but the most ridiculous claim that anyone has to a world record. All you've got to do is put a bit of blue tack on it, and then you've beaten your own record, haven't you? It's stupid. It's a mad record. This is the sort of record that Donald Trump would make up, isn't it? And then it was fishing and trawlers and docks, and Hull was bombed again and again in the war. And this is one account from a writer after a night of bombing. At one house, which was completely destroyed, a woman, black with soot, was asked by a general where her husband was, and the woman immediately replied, "He's fighting in Libya, the coward." After the war, Hull became the centre of immigration. Tens of thousands of Lithuanians, Poles, Ukrainians came over here. There were already hundreds of Chinese in Hull by the time of the Second World War, and you have to feel for them. How are the Chinese supposed to learn English in Hull? I'll have a can of Coke. And dry white wine. But this is a hugely diverse city with your two rugby league clubs, Hull Kingston Rovers called the Robins, and the more imaginatively titled Hull. And it feels like a friendly rivalry, really. There's no actual tension. In fact, there were plans to merge the clubs at one point, which shows how well you got on. Although one person who was in favour of the merger said, "I'm black and white through and through. I won't even have robins in my garden." I got two cats specially to kill them. And that was Roy Waldby, who was president of Hull. The simplest explanation I've heard as to why there's a rivalry is Hull comes from West Hull, the fishing area, and Hull Kingston Rovers from East Hull, which is the docks area. Hull started in the east, though, and moved to the west, whereas Hull Kingston Rovers started in the west and moved to the east. So that's brilliantly Hull, isn't it? So determined to be independent and argumentative, the different bits of you want to be independent from each other, and if the other one moves to your side, you move to their side to carry on moaning about the other one. I bet if Hull people get in an argument and one says, "All right, then, you've won me round. I agree with you." The other one says, "What you agreeing with me for? I was talking shite." And, of course, you've got William Wilberforce, the man who spent so much of his life fighting for slavery to be outlawed. And you celebrate him wonderfully. Not only is there a museum, but according to your tourist leaflet, there is now a yearly Freedom Festival held in Hull celebrating the abolition of slavery, with acts like girl band The Saturdays. And I think that's the ideal way to celebrate it. It's hard to think of any act that more encapsulates the triumph of freedom and the cleansing of the soul at the heart of the abolition of this cruel and inhuman practice than The Saturdays. Wilberforce was living in Wimbledon with his uncle, and he became a Methodist, opposed to drink, and even the theatre was considered the work of the devil. So his mum insisted he left Wimbledon and came to Hull to get him out of his Methodist ways, as Hull was so debauched. You must be proud of that. He kept some of his Methodist ideals, Wilberforce, and he stood for election here as Free Man of Hull, and a stone was thrown at him, right, while he was speaking. And according to William Hay wrote a really good book, actually, about Wilberforce. And according to William Hay's book, the local butcher, Johnny Bell, approached Wilberforce and said, "I've found out who threw the stone at you, and I'll kill him tonight." And Wilberforce told him, "No, you must only frighten him." He was elected as MP for Hull and went to Parliament, where he gambled and drank, and he was apparently a fine singer, and he got a reputation for being a brilliant mimic. And this is the sort of thing your Wilberforce Museum should be full of. I mean, fair enough, mention the abolition of slavery if you want, but your MP in 1780 was a gambling, drinking, womanising, singing mimic who got the butcher to frighten people. That's fantastic. This is how we won his campaign. Who's this coming into Newsnight studio? It's my old friend Andy Murray. Oh, I'm really happy that slavery was abolished. It's got to take it one piece of legislation at a time. And he carried on drinking and staying up all night until he had a crisis, and he decided he would devote the rest of his life to God. And he wrote himself a series of strict rules. This is Wilberforce's strict rules when he decided to abandon all the debauchery. From now on, no desserts. Always in bed by 11, and at dinner no more than 6 glasses of wine. That's brilliantly Hull, isn't it? You hear about William, he's become a monk. At dinner he only has 6 glasses of wine. At one point he wrote, "My endeavours at leading a sober life suffered a setback this evening, for I was attracted by the environs of a gentleman's club known as Spiders, and confessed to now furnishing a love bite from whence I know not." And while the museum is one thing to do in Hull, the Hull Daily Mail gets it in perspective by not even mentioning it amongst the 21 things to do in Hull. But it does mention number 12, give the bee lady some change. It says, arguably Hull's greatest living citizen, Jean Bishop, has been dressing as a bee and collecting money for charity in Hull city centre for more than a decade. And that's just lovely that you'll give money to charity like that as long as it's collected by a 93-year-old woman dressed as a bee. Otherwise, it's I'm not giving money to that hospice. The collector's only 85 and dressed as a moth. John Venn, who invented the Venn diagram, he was from Hull. Although annoyingly, someone from Grimsby then claimed that they invented a diagram called an overlapathon, although it's exactly the same. But the funny thing is that it's brilliant that it comes from Hull, the Venn diagram, because if you were in a Venn diagram, it would have a million things overlapping all the different aspects of Britain, connecting with each other, and then over here, in one bit, all on its own, overlapping with nothing, all. Your food is magnificently independent here as well. You've got patty butties. Kerry, where's Kerry? I'd like to introduce you to Kerry, because first of all, what is a patty butty? Because unbelievable as it may seem, some people in the country might not know.
Well, it's potato with some herbs and spices battered.
So when you have, like, patty and chips, that's...
Yeah, that's potato with potato.
Yeah. And you were telling us about, was it your gran? You were with your gran and you were outside Hull?
Yes, and wanted patty and chips.
Where was this?
It was just outside, it was in Edinburgh.
Right.
And...
That's where the Humber Bridge goes, isn't it?
Yeah. So she wanted patty and chips, and this guy in the chip shop wasn't understanding, offering her fish cake and other delights that she wasn't interested in. So getting angry with him, not understanding, she actually just turned around and said, "Oh, forget it, that I won't have patty and chips, just do me a patty butty."
I've got a book called Me Sannies Are Brannies that says, when I moved to Hull, I went to the fish shop and was offered cutfish. What on earth was cutfish? No one in the chip shop knew what it was. It was just fish that had been cut. So the biggest fishing pool in the world didn't offer cod, haddock or plaice, just fish. According to the book, and I've no idea if this is right or not, hard on is the Hull expression for sound asleep. As in, he was hard on when she came to bed. Do you not find some of your expressions lead to confusion? How many divorces has this caused? It is like being in a Two Ronnies sketch here sometimes. You have conversations like, why has he left the pub? He's gone out for a smirk. Which cigarettes does he smirk? No, a smirk. He's going to half grin at the man on the fern. Who's he calling? No, he's on the fern, the grassy heather by the pub, the fern. Oh, yeah, he's stood in a turd. It's not a turd, it's a frog. I imagine you have arguments here, like we went out for a cream tea and my mate asked for a buttered scone. I said, it's not a scone, it's a scone. And then the book goes on. The most recent controversy was when the Regeneration people introduced a new logo consisting of a cog with the word Hull in it with a small h. All hell was let loose. And I can imagine it would be. Who do they think they bloody are? We're all without pronouncing a capital H. Not all without pronouncing a little h. And you're modern enough to have a submarium, which I went in, and I have to concede, it does have fish in it, unlike aquariums. My favourite was a grumpy-looking thing called a white epaulette shark, which is really rare, actually, because outside Hull, all epaulette sharks are red. And... But that's the point of Hull. It's not quite Britain. It looks like it mostly, but everything's slightly askew. Your phone boxes and your orange chip salt and your funny names for things and streets with names like the Land of Green Ginger, like you've opted out of all the normal rules. You're a permanent city of culture. And the way the world's going, you'll be independent soon, Hull, and then you can start fighting over East Hull and West Hull, and you'll be happy then. So I will leave you, Hull, and thank you very much for being delightful and independent. I will leave you, Hull, with a famous poem from one of your most famous sons, Philip Larkin, who so adored his adopted city that he wrote of his affection for it with these lines. It mucks you up, the town of Hull. It means to, and it does. The barman serves you with a skull, collecting women buzz. Our ferns are white, we're near the Kirst, we haven't an aquarium, that's not a bridge, that is the first Humber Crossolarium.
Mark Steele's In Town was written and performed by Mark Steele.
With additional material by Pete Sinclair.
It was produced in Hull by Carl Cooper.
It was a BBC Studios production.